In this episode, we focus on compliance metrics, which are the numbers and indicators an organization uses to show that controls are not only designed but actually operating over time. Metrics matter because leaders need a way to see whether the compliance program is working, and auditors need evidence that controls are consistent rather than occasional. Beginners often think metrics are just counts, like how many policies exist or how many people completed training. But those simple counts can be misleading and may not survive audit scrutiny. A metric that survives scrutiny is one that is clearly defined, tied to a requirement or control objective, supported by reliable data, and measured consistently in a way that can be repeated. It also needs to be meaningful, meaning it tells you something about risk reduction or control performance, not just activity. The challenge is that it is easy to create metrics that look impressive but can be questioned, manipulated, or misunderstood. Our goal is to show how to define metrics that are defensible, how to monitor them so they stay accurate, and how to use them to improve the program rather than to create a false sense of success. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good starting point is understanding what auditors look for when they evaluate metrics, because that mindset shapes what will withstand scrutiny. Auditors are not usually impressed by large dashboards. They want traceability, consistency, and evidence. They want to know what the metric measures, why it matters, how it is calculated, what data sources support it, and who is responsible for producing and reviewing it. They also want to know that the metric is not cherry-picked or measured only when convenient. For beginners, it helps to see that metrics are a form of evidence, and evidence must be trustworthy. If a metric is based on self-reported data with no verification, it is weak. If a metric's definition changes frequently, it cannot show trends. If a metric is not tied to a control objective, it becomes noise. A metric that survives scrutiny is one where the organization can answer follow-up questions without scrambling. It should be possible to reproduce the metric and explain its meaning to someone who is not involved in creating it. Defining a metric begins with the control objective, because metrics should measure whether the control is doing what it is intended to do. For example, if a control objective is to ensure only authorized users have access to sensitive systems, a meaningful metric might relate to how quickly access is removed when roles change or how many accounts have privileges that exceed role requirements. If a control objective is to ensure vulnerabilities are managed, a meaningful metric might relate to how many high-severity vulnerabilities remain beyond a defined remediation window. Beginners often choose metrics based on what is easy to count, but easy counts can be irrelevant. The right sequence is to define what good control performance looks like, then decide what observable indicators would prove that performance. This keeps the metric aligned with purpose. It also helps avoid metrics that encourage the wrong behavior, such as metrics that reward closing tickets quickly even if the underlying risk remains. A defensible metric also requires precise definition, because ambiguity allows confusion and can undermine credibility. A precise definition includes the scope, the population being measured, the time window, and the formula. If you measure training completion, you must define which training, which roles, which departments, and by what deadline. If you measure patching, you must define which systems are in scope, what counts as patched, and how you treat systems that are offline or exempt. Without precision, different teams can interpret the metric differently and produce inconsistent results. For beginners, the key idea is that metrics are like measurements in science. If you do not define the measurement method, the result cannot be trusted. Precision also supports repeatability, meaning the same metric produced next month will be comparable to this month. That repeatability is what allows the organization to show progress and to identify trends that matter for compliance and risk management. Data quality is another essential requirement, because a metric is only as strong as the data behind it. Auditors often test data quality by asking for samples, checking whether data sources are complete, and verifying whether the calculation method matches the definition. If your data source misses systems, misses users, or is updated irregularly, the metric becomes questionable. This is why it is important to identify authoritative sources, and to understand their limitations. For example, if your asset inventory is incomplete, your patch compliance metric may overstate success because it does not include forgotten systems. If your access records are inconsistent, your access review metric may miss accounts that matter most. Beginners should understand that improving metrics often requires improving underlying inventories and processes. Metrics are not just reporting tools. They reveal the health of the program's foundational data. When data quality is weak, metrics can give false comfort, which is dangerous because it hides risk and undermines audit credibility. Another important aspect of metrics that survive scrutiny is ensuring that metrics are resistant to manipulation and do not incentivize the wrong outcomes. If a metric rewards speed, teams may optimize for closing tasks quickly without ensuring quality. If a metric rewards low incident counts, teams may avoid reporting incidents, which reduces visibility and increases risk. A mature metric design includes safeguards, such as measuring both completion and effectiveness, and combining process metrics with outcome metrics. For example, measuring that access reviews were performed is useful, but combining it with a metric about the number of access changes made as a result can demonstrate that the review is meaningful. Similarly, measuring vulnerability remediation time is useful, but combining it with a metric about recurrence or exceptions can reveal whether remediation is sustainable. For beginners, the key idea is that metrics shape behavior, so you must design them with ethics and realism. A metric that can be gamed will be gamed, often unintentionally, because people respond to what is measured. Monitoring metrics is not only about collecting numbers, it is about governance around the metrics so they remain consistent and useful. That includes assigning an owner for each metric, defining review frequency, setting thresholds that trigger action, and documenting how anomalies are handled. A metric owner is responsible for ensuring the metric is produced correctly, explaining changes, and driving follow-up when performance falls below expectations. Review frequency should match the risk and volatility of what is measured. Some metrics might need monthly review, while others might be quarterly, but they should not be reviewed only at audit time. Thresholds help translate metrics into decisions, such as when to escalate remediation or when to investigate data quality issues. For beginners, it helps to see metrics as part of a control loop. The metric is the sensor, the review is the interpretation, and the remediation action is the response. Without action, metrics become decoration. Metrics also need context to be meaningful, especially when presenting them to auditors and senior management. A number without context can be misinterpreted, and misinterpretation can lead to poor decisions. Context includes trends over time, explanations for spikes or dips, and notes about scope changes. For example, if patch compliance drops because the organization discovered previously unknown systems, that is not necessarily a failure. It may indicate improved inventory accuracy. However, you must explain that clearly so it does not appear as if the program suddenly degraded without reason. Context also includes acknowledging limitations honestly, such as stating where data is incomplete and what is being done to improve it. Auditors respect transparency more than they respect perfect-looking dashboards that fall apart under questioning. For beginners, the key idea is that metrics are part of a narrative about control operation. The narrative must be truthful, supported by evidence, and consistent over time. Another critical factor for audit scrutiny is traceability from metrics back to underlying evidence, because auditors may request supporting artifacts. If you claim that access reviews are completed, you must be able to show records of those reviews, including dates, reviewers, and outcomes. If you claim that incident response testing occurred, you must be able to show documentation of the exercise and the follow-up actions. Traceability means your metrics program must be designed with evidence storage and retrieval in mind. This is not about hoarding documents. It is about being able to demonstrate that metrics reflect real events. For beginners, it helps to think of metrics as labels on boxes. The label is useful only if the box contains what the label claims. When traceability is strong, audits become less disruptive because the organization can respond to requests quickly and confidently. When traceability is weak, audits become painful, and the organization's credibility suffers even if controls exist. Finally, compliance metrics must be used to improve controls, not just to prove compliance. because a metric that never drives improvement is a missed opportunity. If metrics reveal recurring gaps, such as repeated late patching or repeated access review exceptions, that pattern suggests a systemic issue. The organization should investigate root causes, adjust processes, and then monitor whether the metric improves. Over time, this creates a feedback loop where compliance metrics become a tool for real risk reduction. It also strengthens audit outcomes because auditors can see that the organization detects issues and responds systematically. Beginners should understand that compliance is not the absence of findings. It is the presence of discipline. A disciplined organization expects to discover imperfections and uses metrics to correct them. When metrics are designed and used this way, they become credible because they show an honest picture of program health and continuous improvement rather than a staged performance. Defining and monitoring compliance metrics that survive audit scrutiny means treating metrics as evidence of control operation, not as decorative numbers. You start with control objectives and define metrics precisely with clear scope, consistent formulas, and repeatable measurement methods. You ensure data quality by relying on authoritative sources and understanding limitations, because weak inventories and inconsistent records produce weak metrics. You design metrics to resist manipulation by balancing activity measures with effectiveness measures so teams are rewarded for real outcomes, not just completed tasks. You assign ownership, review cadence, thresholds, and follow-up actions so metrics create a control loop that drives improvement. You provide context and maintain traceability to supporting artifacts so auditors can validate claims quickly and confidently. When metrics are built and governed with this discipline, they become a reliable way to demonstrate compliance, guide leadership decisions, and strengthen the security program in ways that are visible, measurable, and defensible.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.